The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours of Ambassador Grant's announcement, every inhabited world knew what had happened. Humanity was leaving the Galactic Compact. Not in 100 years. Not after more negotiations. Now. On the colony world of New Athens, Governor Christopher Lane watched the broadcasts from his office. The room was simple, with plain furniture and a large window that looked out over the city below. New Athens was a young colony, only 50 years old, but it had already become one of humanity's most important worlds. 2 million people lived here, building a new civilization far from Earth. Christopher was a tall man, with a shaved head and deep brown skin. He had been arguing for this moment for 20 years. Every time he had spoken to the council, every time he had watched humans being treated as second-class citizens, he had known that this day would come. Now it was here, and he felt no joy, only a grim satisfaction that they were finally standing up for themselves. His communication screen lit up with an incoming call. It was Admiral Samantha Cole, commander of the human fleet. "Governor Lane," she said. Her face was serious but calm. "You have heard the news." "I have. What are our orders?" "Operation Homecoming is now in effect. Every human ship, every human soldier, every human worker on alien worlds is to return to Earth-controlled space within 30 days. Christopher nodded slowly. They had planned for this. For years they had quietly prepared for the possibility that they might have to leave. Supply routes had been mapped. Emergency protocols had been established. They had hoped they would never need to use them. Now they would find out if their preparations were good enough. 30 days is not much time, he said. "It is enough," Samantha replied. "We are ready." In the shipyards orbiting Mars, the evacuation had already begun. Hundreds of transport ships were being loaded with equipment and personnel. Engineers who had spent their careers maintaining alien technology were packing their tools and saying goodbye to colleagues they might never see again. Commander Jason Webb stood on the observation deck of the main station, watching the organized chaos below. He was young for his rank, only 35 years old, with red hair and pale skin that burned easily under alien suns. He had spent the last 10 years working on Prothani shield generators, technology that the bear-like aliens could not maintain themselves. A Prothani technician approached him. The creature was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick brown fur and small eyes that showed confusion and anger. "You cannot leave," the Prothani growled. "Our fleet depends on your work. Without you, our shields will fail within months." Jason looked at the alien with something close to pity. "I know. I tried to train your people to maintain the systems themselves. You refused. You said it was beneath the dignity of Prothani warriors to learn human technology. That was the decision of our leaders, not mine. Then perhaps you should speak to your leaders. My orders are clear. I leave tomorrow." The Prothani made a sound deep in his throat, a rumble of frustration that Jason had learned to recognize over the years. Then the alien turned and walked away without another word. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds. Human doctors were closing their clinics on Velthrani colonies. Human teachers were leaving the academies where they had trained young aliens in mathematics and science. Human engineers were shutting down the power plants and water treatment facilities they had built with their own hands. On the Sylvari homeworld, Ambassador Lyris watched the human ships departing with growing concern. Her species was made of pure energy, beings of light who had existed for millions of years. They were wise in many ways, but they had long ago forgotten how to grow food. For centuries, they had relied on other species to feed their population. For the last 100 years, that task had fallen to humanity. The farms that surrounded the great Sylvari cities were run entirely by humans. The technology was not complicated, but it required constant attention. Crops needed to be planted at the right time, watered in the right amounts, harvested before they spoiled. The Sylvari had never bothered to learn these skills. Why should they, when humans were always there to handle such simple matters? Now the humans were leaving, and no one knew how to replace them. Lyris sent urgent messages to the Galactic Council, demanding that something be done. High Chancellor Zorvath responded with empty reassurances. The humans were bluffing, he said. They would return once they realized they could not survive without the protection of the compact. All the council needed to do was wait. But the days passed, and the humans did not return. Instead, more ships departed, more facilities were shut down. More worlds began to feel the absence of their human workers. Ambassador Daniel Grant received hundreds of messages from alien leaders begging him to reconsider. He read each one carefully, then deleted it without responding. Nicole Parker suggested that they should at least acknowledge the messages, but Daniel shook his head. They still think this is a negotiating tactic. They still believe we need them more than they need us. When they understand the truth, then we can talk. On Earth, the returning humans were welcomed as heroes. Parades were held in cities around the world. Politicians gave speeches praising the courage of those who had walked away from the only alliance humanity had ever known. But beneath the celebrations, there was also fear. No one knew what would happen next. Would the aliens attack? Would they blockade Earth? Would humanity be able to survive alone in a hostile galaxy? Admiral Cole addressed these fears in a broadcast that reached every human colony. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Resolute, surrounded by the stars. "We did not leave the compact because we are weak," she said. "We left because we are strong. For 300 years, we built, and we served, and we asked for nothing in return except respect. Now they will learn what our respect was worth." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The coming months will be difficult. We will face challenges we cannot predict, but we have faced worse. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. We will not stop now." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to change. Trade routes that had relied on human ships fell silent. Factories that had used human designs stopped producing. Medical treatments that human doctors had provided became unavailable. The Crothani were the first to feel the full impact. Their defensive fleet, the pride of their species, was powered by shield generators that no Crothani knew how to repair. When the first generator failed, they tried to fix it themselves. The explosion killed 50 warriors and destroyed an entire ship. The Sylvari faced a different crisis. Without human farmers, their crops began to die. Emergency rationing was implemented, but it was not enough. For the first time in millennia, the immortal beings of light knew what it meant to be hungry. High Chancellor Zorvath watched these disasters unfold from his chamber on Corvaxis Prime. He had ruled the Galactic Council for 200 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything like this. A minor species, barely evolved from animals, had brought the greatest powers in the galaxy to their knees simply by walking away. He sent one final message to Ambassador Grant. It was not a demand or a threat. It was a question. "What do you want?" The reply came quickly. Just 3 words. "Ask us properly." Zorvath read those words again and again. He did not understand what they meant. He had asked a question. What more could the humans want? But as the days passed and more systems failed, and more species demanded answers he could not give, Zorvath began to suspect that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had been right all along. They were not servants. They were not children waiting for permission to grow up. They were the foundation on which everything else had been built. And now that foundation was gone. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Galactic Compact. In that time, the universe had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council still floated above Corvaxis Prime, but it no longer felt grand. The crystal dome that had once shone with the light of 3 suns now seemed dark and cold. Of the 47 species that had once filled this chamber, only 31 had sent representatives. The others were too busy dealing with their own disasters to attend meetings that accomplished nothing. High Chancellor Zorvath tried to call the session to order, but his voice had lost its authority. The clicking of his mandibles, which had once commanded silence, now drew only tired looks from the delegates who remained. We must discuss the situation with the Velthrani border colonies. The Crothani have accused us of violating the Treaty of Neutral Space. The Crothani delegate, a scarred warrior named Vornak, rose from his seat. He was smaller than most of his species, but his eyes burned with anger. The treaty was guaranteed by human observers, Vornak growled. There are no human observers anymore. The treaty is meaningless. The treaty stands regardless of who enforces it, Zorvath replied. Words on paper mean nothing without strength to back them up. Your ships were seen in our territory. We demand compensation. A Velthrani general stood up, his 4 arms raised in challenge. We were conducting routine patrols. The Crothani are lying, as they always do. Vornak roared and started to move toward the Velthrani section. Security drones activated throughout the chamber, but they were old models that moved slowly. In the past, human peacekeepers would have intervened before any violence could occur. Now, there were no peacekeepers at all. Ambassador Lyris of the Silvari Collective raised her luminescent form and projected a wave of calming energy across the chamber. It was enough to stop Vornak in his tracks, but the anger on his face did not fade. This is madness, Lyris said. Her voice was soft, but carried to every corner of the hall. We are tearing ourselves apart over borders that have been settled for 50 years. The treaty was clear. The humans helped us write it. Now they are gone, and we have forgotten what we agreed to. Then we need new treaties, Vornak said. Who will write them? Who will enforce them? We cannot even agree on what day it is without arguing for hours. Silence fell over the chamber. Lyris was right, and everyone knew it. The humans had done more than maintain technology and grow food. They had been the neutral voice in every dispute, the patient mediator who helped enemies find common ground. Without them, old hatreds that had been buried for generations were rising back to the surface. Zorvath tried to regain control. We will table the border discussion for now. The more urgent matter is the food shortage on the Silvari homeworld. Lyris flickered with something that might have been despair. Our situation grows worse by the day. The crops the humans planted are dying. We have tried to maintain them ourselves, but we do not understand the technology. Half of our population is now on emergency rations. Have you asked the humans for help? A delegate from a minor species asked. We have sent dozens of messages. They do not respond. Then send more messages. Offer them whatever they want. Lyris shook her head, her light dimming. I do not think they want anything from us anymore. We had 300 years to treat them as equals. We chose instead to treat them as servants. Now they have no reason to listen to our pleas. In the observation gallery above the main chamber, a single human woman sat alone. Her name was Dr. Catherine Mills, and she had been left behind when the evacuation occurred, not as a hostage, but as a witness. Ambassador Grant had asked her to stay and watch what happened. He wanted a record of the council's fall. Catherine was a small woman with gray hair and glasses that she constantly adjusted. She had been a historian before joining the diplomatic corps, and she approached her task with the careful attention of a scholar documenting the end of an empire. She recorded everything, the arguments, the accusations, the small moments when delegates who had once been friends refused to look at each other. She noted how the cleaning drones had stopped working because no one knew how to maintain them. She observed how the lights in the chamber had begun to flicker because the power systems were failing. Every night, she transmitted her reports back to Earth through a hidden communication device. She did not know if anyone was reading them, but she kept writing anyway. Someday, someone would want to know how the greatest alliance in galactic history had fallen apart in just 6 months. Her latest report was simple and direct. Day 183. The Council met today to discuss 3 separate crises. They resolved none of them. The Velthrani and Crothani are now openly threatening war. The Silvari are facing famine. 12 smaller species have stopped attending sessions entirely, preferring to focus on their own survival. She paused, looking down at the chaos below. The strangest part is that none of this needed to happen. The technology the humans built still works. The treaties they wrote are still valid. The solutions they developed are still available. But without humans to operate the machines and interpret the treaties and implement the solutions, everything falls apart. She continued writing. I have spoken with several delegates in private. They all say the same thing. They did not realize how much work the humans were doing. They assumed the galaxy ran itself, that order was natural and peace was automatic. They did not understand that every day, thousands of humans were working quietly in the background to keep everything functioning. Catherine saved her report and prepared to transmit it. As she did, a message arrived on her personal screen. It was from Ambassador Grant. How much longer, she asked in her reply. The response came quickly. Not long now. They are almost ready to ask properly. Catherine did not understand what that meant, but she trusted Daniel. He had been planning this for decades. All she could do was watch and wait and record what she saw. Below her, the council session had descended into open shouting. Vornak was demanding that the Crothani fleet be allowed to seize Velthrani territory. The Velthrani general was threatening to destroy the Crothani homeworld. Smaller species were forming alliances with whoever would protect them. Zorvath sat on his high platform, watching his empire crumble. For 200 years, he had ruled this council with absolute authority. His word had been law. His decisions had shaped the fate of trillions. Now, no one even listened when he spoke. He thought about the human ambassador, who had stood in this very chamber 6 months ago. Daniel Grant had not raised his voice. He had not made threats. He had simply stated a fact. Humanity was leaving. And then he had walked out. At the time, Zorvath had believed it was a bluff. Humans were weak, he had told himself. They needed the protection of the compact to survive. They would come crawling back within weeks, begging to be allowed to return. But the weeks had passed, and the humans had not returned. Instead, they had built new defenses around their territory. They had strengthened their fleet. They had proven that they did not need anyone's protection at all. And the Galactic Council, which had stood for 10,000 years, was dying without them. Zorvath rose from his seat and left the chamber. No one noticed. No one cared. He walked through the empty corridors of the station that had once been the center of galactic civilization. The lights flickered. The floors were dirty. Somewhere in the distance, he heard the sound of an alarm that no one was responding to. He had been so certain that humanity was a minor species. He had been so confident that they would never amount to anything. Now he understood his mistake. The Council had needed humanity, and now it was too late to tell them so. 1 year had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Compact. The universe that had seemed so stable for 10,000 years was now barely recognizable. At the edge of Earth-controlled space, a fleet of alien ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were not warships. They carried no weapons. They were transports, painted white to signal peaceful intentions, moving slowly toward the human border with all their shields lowered. Admiral Samantha Cole watched them approach from the bridge of her flagship, the Resolute. She was an older woman now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes were still sharp, and her mind still quick. She had commanded the human fleet for 15 years, and in all that time, she had never seen anything like this. "They are requesting permission to enter our space," her communications officer reported. "The message is from High Chancellor Zorvath. He says they come as friends, not enemies." Samantha considered this for a moment. Zorvath had been the one who denied humanity a seat on the council. He had laughed at Ambassador Grant and called humanity primitive. Now he was coming to them with white flags and peaceful intentions. "Allow them to approach," she said. "But they stop at the border. No further." The alien fleet came to a halt exactly where she indicated. A single shuttle detached from the largest transport and flew toward the Resolute. Inside were delegates from 12 different species, including Zorvath himself. Samantha did not go to meet them. Instead, she sent a lieutenant to escort them to a conference room where they would wait. She wanted them to understand that things had changed. They were not honored guests. They were petitioners asking for a favor. She contacted Earth and reported what was happening. The response came from Daniel Grant, who was now serving as Secretary of Interstellar Affairs. He listened to her report without interrupting, then gave her instructions. "Let them transmit their message to us directly. I want to hear what they have to say." Samantha arranged for the transmission to be broadcast to Daniel's office in Geneva. Then she went to the conference room where the aliens waited. The room was plain with simple furniture and no decorations. The alien delegates looked uncomfortable. They were used to grand chambers and formal ceremonies. This was not what they had expected. Zorvath stood at the center of the group. He was older now, his black carapace fading to gray in places. The confidence that had once defined him was gone. In its place was something that Samantha had never seen in a Velthrani before. Humility. "Admiral Cole," Zorvath began. His voice was translated by machines, but even through the translation, she could hear the strain in his words. "We have come to speak with your leaders. We wish to discuss the terms of humanity's return to the Galactic Compact." Samantha did not respond. Instead, she activated a screen on the wall. Daniel Grant's face appeared, transmitted live from Earth. "High Chancellor Zorvath," Daniel said. "It has been a long time." Zorvath bent his great head in a gesture of respect. It was the first time any Velthrani had ever shown such deference to a human. "Ambassador Grant, or should I say Secretary Grant now, your species has promoted you. Our species recognizes those who serve it well, something the Council never understood." Zorvath accepted the rebuke without protest. "You are right. We did not understand. We thought humanity was a minor species, useful for certain tasks, but not worthy of true partnership. We were wrong. You were." The other delegates shifted nervously. Ambassador Lyris of the Silvari floated forward, her light dim and flickering. "Secretary Grant, please. My people are dying. The famine has claimed millions already. We have tried everything we know, but we cannot grow food the way humans can. I am begging you for help." Daniel's expression softened slightly. "I am sorry for your suffering, Ambassador Lyris, truly. You were always among the few who treated us with respect. But I cannot help you unless the Council first acknowledges what humanity is owed." "Name your terms," Zorvath said quickly. "Whatever you want, we will give it. That is not how this works. You spent 300 years telling us what we deserved. Now you must tell us what you believe we deserve. I want to hear you say it." Silence fell over the conference room. The alien delegates looked at each other, uncertain how to proceed. They had come expecting to negotiate. They had brought offers of money and territory and technology. But Daniel was not asking for any of those things. Vornok, the Krothani delegate who had replaced the previous representative after a military coup, stepped forward. He was a young warrior, scarred from battles he had fought in the chaos of the past year. The Crothani recognized that humanity is not a servant species, he said. His voice was rough, as if the words were being torn from his throat. You are warriors. You are builders. You are equals. It was the first time any Crothani had ever said such a thing about humans. Daniel nodded slowly. Thank you, Delegate Vornok. That must have been difficult for you. It was, but it is true. My people have learned hard lessons this year. Our fleet is crippled. Our colonies are under attack from raiders we cannot stop. We need human engineers to repair our shields. We need human soldiers to help defend our borders. We are asking for your help. One by one, the other delegates spoke. Each one admitted that they had been wrong about humanity. Each one acknowledged that humans were not primitive, or weak, or unworthy of respect. Each one asked for help with crises they could not solve on their own. Zorvath was the last to speak. I have ruled the Galactic Council for 200 years, he said. In all that time, I believed that the order we created was stable and eternal. I believed that we had solved the problems of war and poverty and suffering. I did not realize that this order was maintained by the constant work of beings I considered beneath my notice. He paused, his compound eyes reflecting the light from Lyris's fading glow. Humanity did not just contribute to our civilization. Humanity was the foundation of our civilization. Without you, we have nothing. I see that now. I should have seen it 300 years ago. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Nicole Parker stood beside him, watching the screen with an unreadable expression. What are you offering? Daniel finally asked. A permanent seat on the High Council, Zorvath said. Full voting rights on all matters. Recognition as a first-tier species with all the privileges that status entails. That is what we asked for a year ago. You refused. I know, I was a fool. But that is not all we are offering. Zorvath straightened, trying to recover some of his lost dignity. We are asking humanity to take leadership of the peacekeeping forces. We are asking you to mediate our disputes. We are asking you to rebuild the systems that have failed since you left. You are asking us to run your civilization for you. Yes, because you are the only ones who can. Daniel turned to Nicole. They spoke quietly for a moment, their voices too low for the transmission to pick up. Then Daniel faced the screen again. Admiral Cole will escort you to temporary quarters where you will wait for our response. I suggest you make yourselves comfortable. This decision will not be made quickly. Zorvath bowed his head again. We understand. We will wait as long as necessary. The transmission ended. Samantha looked at the alien delegates standing before her. Beings who had once looked down on humanity as primitive animals. Now they stood in a plain room on a human ship, waiting to learn if humanity would save them from the disaster they had created. Follow me, she said. Your quarters are this way. As she led them through the corridors of the Resolute, Samantha allowed herself a small smile. For 300 years, humanity had asked for nothing but fairness. Now fairness had finally come, delivered not by the generosity of the powerful, but by the consequences of their own arrogance. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The question now was whether humanity would give them a second chance. The signing ceremony took place on Earth, in the Great Assembly Hall of the United Nations in New York City. It was a building that had stood for centuries, a symbol of humanity's long struggle to create peace among its own tribes. Now it would become a symbol of something greater, peace among the stars. The hall was filled with delegates from across the galaxy. For the first time in history, leaders of alien civilizations had come to a human world not as conquerors or patrons, but as guests. They sat in seats designed for human bodies, breathing air filtered to human standards, surrounded by human guards who watched them with careful eyes. Secretary Daniel Grant stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. He was an old man now, his hair completely white, and his face lined with decades of struggle. But his voice was still strong, and his eyes still held the fire that had driven him to walk out of the Galactic Council 1 year ago. Beside him sat Commander Nicole Parker, who had been with him since the beginning. She had aged too, but gracefully, her sharp mind still as quick as ever. Behind them stood Admiral Samantha Cole, and Governor Christopher Lane, and Dr. Catherine Mills, the historian who had witnessed the fall of the old order, and would now witness the birth of the new. High Chancellor Zorvath had resigned his position 3 months earlier. In his place, the council had elected Ambassador Lyris of the Silvari Collective. She was the first non-Velthrani to lead the council in 8,000 years, chosen because she had always treated humanity with respect, even when others did not. Lyris floated at the center of the alien delegation, her golden light stronger now than it had been during the darkest days of the famine. Human farmers had returned to the Silvari homeworld and saved her people from starvation. She would never forget that debt. The document they were about to sign was not a treaty of equals. It was a new compact, one that placed humanity at the center of galactic civilization. Human law would serve as the template for interstellar justice. Human peacekeepers would patrol the borders between species. Human mediators would resolve disputes that had festered for millennia. Daniel stepped up to the microphone. The hall fell silent. "We gather here today to sign a new agreement between humanity and the peoples of the galaxy," he began. "This agreement is different from the one that came before. The old compact treated humanity as a junior partner, a young species that had not yet earned its place among the stars. It died because it was built on a lie." He paused, letting his words sink in. The lie was that humanity needed the galaxy more than the galaxy needed humanity. For 300 years, we accepted this lie. We worked harder than any other species. We built and maintained systems that others could not understand. We kept the peace between rivals who would have destroyed each other without our help. And we asked for nothing in return except to be treated as equals. He looked directly at the alien delegates. "You refused. You called us primitive. You called us children. You told us to wait and be patient, and perhaps someday, if we were very good, you might consider giving us the respect we had already earned 100 times over." Several of the alien delegates lowered their eyes. They remembered those days. They remembered their arrogance and their contempt. "So we left," Daniel continued. "We did not threaten you. We did not attack you. We simply stopped doing the work that held your civilization together. And within months, everything began to fall apart." He softened his voice slightly. "I do not say this to shame you. I say it because we must all understand what happened and why. The old order failed because it was unjust. Any system built on exploitation and disrespect will eventually collapse. That is a law as certain as gravity." He gestured to the document on the table before him. "This new compact is built on different principles. It recognizes that every species has value. It acknowledges that the work of maintaining civilization is noble, not shameful. It establishes that those who do the most to preserve peace and prosperity deserve the greatest say in how that peace and prosperity are managed." Lyris floated forward to stand beside Daniel. Her light was warm and gentle. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I accept these principles." Her voice was soft, but carried to every corner of the hall. "We come to you not as superiors granting favors to inferiors, but as partners, seeking to build something better than what came before." She turned to face the alien delegates. "Let us be honest with ourselves. We failed. For 10,000 years, we built an empire that seemed eternal, and it crumbled in less than a year when humanity walked away. This should teach us humility. We are not as wise as we believed. We are not as powerful as we pretended. We need each other, all of us, if we are to survive what lies ahead. Daniel nodded and picked up a pen. It was a simple instrument, made of metal and ink, the same kind humans had used for centuries. He signed his name at the bottom of the document, in clear, steady letters. Lyris extended a tendril of light, and left her mark beside his. One by one the other delegates came forward to add their signatures. Vornok the Crofani pressed his claw into the paper, leaving a mark in blood as was his people's tradition. Representatives from species that had once mocked humanity now stood in line to pledge their commitment to the new order. When the last signature was added, Daniel turned to face the crowd. "This document does not end our troubles," he said. "There is much work to be done. Systems must be rebuilt. Wounds must be healed. Trust must be earned through years of honest effort. But today we take the first step on that long road." He looked at Nicole, who smiled at him with pride. He looked at Catherine, who was furiously taking notes for the history she would someday write. He looked at Samantha, whose fleet would now keep peace across 100 worlds. He looked at Christopher, whose colony would become a center of learning for beings from every corner of the galaxy. "We did not seek to rule," Daniel said. "We never did. We sought only to be treated with fairness. You gave us no choice but to walk away. Now you have given us the opportunity to return. We will not waste it." Outside the Great Hall, crowds had gathered to watch the ceremony on massive screens. Humans and aliens stood side by side, watching history unfold. For the first time, they were not divided into masters and servants, superiors and inferiors. They were simply citizens of a galaxy that was learning to live together. Catherine Mills stood at the back of the hall, her recording device capturing every moment. She had spent the last year documenting the fall of the old order. Now she would document the birth of the new. Admiral Cole appeared beside her, watching the delegates shake hands and exchange formal greetings. "Do you think it will last?" Catherine asked quietly. Cole considered the question. She had seen war and peace, triumph and disaster. She knew how fragile civilizations could be. "It will last as long as we make it last," she said finally. "That has always been the human way. We do not wait for the universe to give us our place. We do not accept the roles that others assign to us. We build our own future with our own hands." She looked at Catherine with a slight smile. "The galaxy forgot that about us. They thought we were weak because we were patient. They thought we were primitive because we were kind. They learned the truth the hard way. Now they know what we have always known." "And what is that?" Cole turned back to watch Daniel Grant, the old man who had changed everything by simply having the courage to walk away. "That humanity does not give up. We do not surrender. We do not accept that things must stay the way they are, simply because that is how they have always been. We push forward, always forward, no matter what stands in our way." Outside the hall, the sun was setting over a changed world. The light painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, the same colors that had greeted humans since the first of them had looked up and wondered what lay beyond the horizon. They had found the answer. Beyond the horizon lay the stars, and among the stars lay a galaxy that had finally learned to respect them. The old order was dead. The new order had begun, and at its center stood humanity, no longer asking for permission, no longer waiting for acceptance, finally taking the place they had earned through centuries of work and sacrifice and patient determination. The galaxy would never forget the lesson they had taught. Humanity was not a minor species. Humanity was the foundation on which everything else was built. And now, at last, the universe understood. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building in the known universe. It floated above the neutral world of Corvaxis Prime, a massive dome made of crystal that caught the light of 3 suns. Inside this hall, representatives from 47 alien species sat in their assigned sections. They had gathered here for thousands of years to make decisions that affected trillions of lives across the galaxy. Ambassador Daniel Grant stood alone in the center of the chamber. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years of his life in this hall, fighting for humanity's place among the stars. Behind him stood Commander Nicole Parker, his most trusted aide. She was younger than him, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The chamber was full of strange creatures. Some had scales, some had fur, some were made of pure light, some breathed gases that would kill a human in seconds. They all looked down at Daniel Grant with expressions that ranged from boredom to open contempt. High Chancellor Zorvath sat on the tallest platform. He was the leader of the Galactic Council, a massive insect-like creature from the Velthrani Dominion. His body was covered in black armor that gleamed under the lights. He had 4 arms and 2 large compound eyes that reflected Daniel's image 1,000 times over. Zorvath clicked his mandibles together. This was how his species laughed. "The Council has reached its decision," Zorvath announced. His voice was translated by machines into a language Daniel could understand. "Humanity will remain a probationary species for another 100 standard years. After this period, the Council will review your status again." A murmur went through the chamber. Some of the alien delegates nodded in approval. Others simply watched to see how the human would react. Daniel felt his heart beating fast in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had expected this. He had prepared for this. But hearing the words still hurt. "May I ask the reason for this decision?" Daniel said. His voice was steady. Zorvath waved one of his 4 arms in a gesture of dismissal. "Your species is too young. Your civilization has existed for only a brief moment compared to the great empires represented here. Your technology, while interesting, is still primitive by our standards. Your lifespans are short. You die before you can accumulate true wisdom." "We have contributed much to this alliance," Daniel replied. "Our engineers have built ships for species that had forgotten how to build their own. Our doctors have cured diseases that plagued your worlds for centuries. Our soldiers have defended borders that other species considered beneath their concern. And we are grateful for your service," Zorvath said. The way he said it made it clear that he was not grateful at all. But service is not the same as leadership. You must learn to walk before you can run, as I believe your people say. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Crothani delegate, a massive bear-like creature with 3 rows of teeth, slapped his paw against his seat in amusement. The Velthrani delegates clicked their mandibles in unison. Daniel looked around the chamber. He saw the faces of beings who had taken everything humanity had offered and given nothing in return. For 300 years, humans had worked harder than any other species to prove their worth. They had asked for nothing except to be treated as equals. And for 300 years, they had been told to wait. He turned to look at Nicole. She met his eyes and gave a small nod. They had discussed this moment many times. They had planned for every possibility. Now the time had come to make a choice that would change everything. Daniel turned back to face the council. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "I understand," he said. "The council has made its position clear. Humanity is not welcome as an equal partner in this alliance." "You misunderstand," Zorvath began, but Daniel continued speaking. "We do not misunderstand. We have understood perfectly for 300 years. We simply hoped that things might change. We hoped that our contributions might eventually earn us the respect we deserve." The chamber had grown quiet. Something in Daniel's voice made even the oldest delegates pay attention. But hope is not a strategy, Daniel continued, and patience has its limits, even for humans. Therefore, on behalf of the United Earth Government and all human colonies throughout the galaxy, I hereby announce our withdrawal from the Galactic Compact. This withdrawal is effective immediately. For a long moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Then, chaos erupted. Zorvath rose from his seat, his forearms waving in agitation. You cannot do this. The compact has stood for 10,000 years. And it will continue to stand without us, Daniel replied. You have made it clear that humanity is not essential to this alliance. We are simply accepting your judgment. The Crothani delegate roared in anger. This is madness. You cannot survive without the protection of the Council. Daniel looked at the massive creature without fear. We survived for millions of years before we knew you existed. We will survive again. Ambassador Lyris of the Sylvari Collective, a being made of pure golden light, floated forward. Please, Ambassador Grant, let us discuss this. Surely there is room for negotiation. There was always room for negotiation, Daniel said. You chose not to use it. For 300 years, we asked only for fairness. You gave us nothing but contempt. Now we give you nothing in return. He turned and began walking toward the exit. Nicole fell into step beside him. You will regret this, Zorvath shouted after him. The galaxy will not bend to human demands. Daniel stopped at the door and looked back one last time. The great chamber that had seemed so intimidating when he first entered it now looked small and petty. We are not making demands, he said. We are simply leaving. What happens next is entirely up to you. Then he walked out, and the doors closed behind him. In the chamber, the delegates turned to each other in confusion and fear. No species had ever left the compact before. The rules did not account for this possibility. The entire system was built on the assumption that every species would do anything to remain inside. Zorvath tried to restore order, but no one was listening. The Crothani were arguing with the Velthrani. The Sylvari were demanding emergency sessions. Smaller species were asking what this meant for their treaties and trade agreements. Outside the chamber, Daniel Grant walked through the long corridors of the station. His footsteps echoed on the metal floor. Nicole walked beside him in silence. Do you think they will call us back? She finally asked. Daniel shook his head. Not yet. They are too proud. They think we are bluffing. Are we? Daniel stopped walking. He looked out a window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, billions of humans waited to hear what had happened. They had trusted him to speak for them. Now he had committed them all to a path from which there was no return. No, he said quietly. We are not bluffing. We are finally telling the truth. They never wanted partners. They wanted servants. And humanity will not serve. He started walking again, and Nicole followed. Behind them, the sounds of argument and chaos grew fainter with each step. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to lose humanity.